Hey, good to be back with
Yeah,
Gert-Jan again. Hey,
definitely good to be back. Yes.
one day I'm going to say your name correctly, but with the full-on Dutch accent. But right now, still not.
Or I think you can pronounce it multiple ways in English, so I don't mind if you pronounce it not correct.
Good. But I should try one day, but just not live on here. But yeah.
Is the G of the G is that pronounceable for an Englishman? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll find out one day. Maybe after this, we'll get on a call like that. You can make me practice. But yeah.
So good to be back. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Been busy. Been doing lots of AI, internal development, thinking about the future and what AI can do for managed service practice and stuff like that. How about you?
Yeah, busy as always, I think, but doing some cool things. Doing some designs, also some P1s. But we are coming back to that. I think in a second with some disaster recovery. What we are going to talk about. But yeah, it's been a bit busy. Yeah, but fun. To be honest,
it's always fun, isn't it? Tech,
tech troubleshooting.
Yeah,
that's the source of what makes a business, I think, fun. Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, you just sort of mentioned what we're going to talk about today, a bit of disaster recovery, backups, how important it actually is. Do people use it? What do we see? What do we do and recommend? That kind of stuff. So we just sort of get straight into it. Maybe tell us, for the people who don't know, how important is backups and DR?
That's a really good question. So I think in first of all, it's a difference, right? You have a backup, or you in your disaster recovery. It's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think backup needs to be mandatory. Disaster recovery also, but it's disaster recovery is mainly I think a business promise. A promise to what you have got for your business, to say, hey, if there's something, an emergency, we can disaster recovery back to another region or something else. A backup is just mandatory in the sense that you always want to have your data backup, so when there's an emergency, you can restore your latest data back, I think. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe not always just data as well, but maybe like I'm going back in the days of when I used to look after Hyper-V machines, and we would back up the Hyper-V, the whole machine, doing the volume shadow snapshotting and stuff like that, and then being able to recover that to somewhere else. If for some reason, like a failover clustering died, you could then restore that snapshot on another Hyper-V machine somewhere else in your co-location data center, if you're lucky enough to have one back in the day. But there's also an age-old saying when it comes to backup: if you don't actually check your backup, then it's not actually backed up.
Yeah, that's really good. I think you need to test your backup once a quarter, maybe once. Yeah, that needs to be a normal sequence, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we at Intercept, as part of our cloud control contracts, we actually recommend you do a DR, quarterly DR, will backup restore, just to make sure your data is working and stuff like that. Obviously, we're monitoring the Azure backups and stuff like that to make sure they are green ticks or green circles with a white tick, I think it is. But that they're always good. And then if they're broken, we go and investigate and fix it. So definitely make sure you're doing that if you're not.
If you are not doing it, you will come to a surprise when it's actually needed, right? So I think with backups, you need to do that every quarter. Like I said, disaster recovery is maybe a little bit different, because you then also need to take account your infrastructure and where do you want to deploy, which kind of emergency you have. But you can also test that once a year, I guess.
Yeah. When I used to work with on-prem servers, maybe 10 plus years ago, God, that's making me sound old. We would literally sometimes we would get this lorry come to our site with server racks inside it, and then we would do our DR testing onto that. Sometimes we would go off to their site, and then with all of our backup disk, the old LTS 5s or whatever they were, back full of them, out of the fire safe, off up to their data center I think it was in Birmingham, and then it would just like do the restores from the tapes, make sure everything's working, the domain controllers are coming back up, and you can log in.
Write everything, write every step down what is going wrong, because for the next step we need to take that in control. So because it's a process, right? Not every disaster recovery. So the simulation can be the same, but in practice, a disaster recovery can also be always a little bit different. So you need to adjust your steps right based on that one, right? So that's the reason why I wanted to do it. I think once a year, once in the 2 years, to perform the disaster recovery and extract that from your backup test, because backup is different. And you can do that on the same server, or you can say, okay, I want to restore the whole VM in the same region. That's slightly different, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And then with backups, we have Azure backup and Azure site recovery, and then obviously third-party backups. What kind of things would we recommend, and what do we see?
I think the technology in Azure Land is really good, that you can use the Azure backup, the Azure native one. There are a couple of cool benefits you can have. The immutable fault, so that is not being rewritten when your backup is hijacked. You don't want that, but it have some safety measurements. You can have your own keys, your Azure keys, to manage your. So if you want to say, okay, but I want to manage my own access to the vault, and say, hey, I want to have my own keys. You can use that. So you have some couple of capabilities, but also Veeam, for example, can also work in Azure.
Yeah. And so you just mentioned immutability on the backups, which is really cool and stuff. So that, if I remember right, in Azure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't played with this technology for a little while now, because I'm all about the cloud native stuff. But you were with the immutability and the Azure backup vaults and stuff like that. It basically, it's inside your Azure tenant and subscription, but not inside it at the same time. Like Microsoft sort of move it off site in a way, so it's that super secure access or something like that.
I think you can phrase it like that. So it is not in touch with your old history. That's the reason why you can. So if you look at it on premise way, so back in the days you had probably some backup server that is backup in your environment. That's on your domain maybe, but for a disaster recovery, if your backup is compromised, you want to isolate it, or you want to also replicate it to an isolated environment, right? So that's not connected to the domain, that is not connected to whatsoever. So you know that your local server with your replicated backups are always right, and it's not encrypted if your domain backup is encrypted. Do you know what I mean? So that's basically it. So leave it out of the context, probably.
Nice, because we've got a few customers who take it a step further as well. So they back in the day, Azure backup didn't support like MySQL backups or storage account backups and stuff like that, especially for like the data lake storage and stuff. So we sort of like figured out a solution how to like send that off to a whole different Azure tenant, so that it's like an off-site backup as such, and it's all super secure, and only that VNet can talk to this VNet through the Azure backbone and stuff like that, and then the permissions are there, so it's like fine-grained, and the immutability hopefully doesn't follow the encryption path, so that should all be cut off as well, because it's all like time banded and stuff like that, and it seems to work quite well, like as an off-site backup. Obviously you could probably even push that to like a different cloud provider like AWS, or even maybe a sovereign cloud, as that's the big terms now going on. Do you think
that's a really good step? Like I said, if you have your disaster recovery right, I think the step to a sovereign cloud will also be is also easier, right? Because
that's
if you
exactly
say,
what I was just going to ask,
so if you say, okay, I pick my environment up from this region, and I want to deploy it in another country or another region, And if that is working, then the step to sovereignty is also.
Yeah, because I guess if we think about it, like a traditional, I'm going to say traditional and not legacy because people don't like the word legacy. A traditional, server, SQL server, and then maybe a bit of file storage, that kind of backup, VMs, SQL server, you could easily replicate that pretty much anywhere, to any cloud, any on-prem and stuff like that. And I think, you got, if we were using Veeam, that's super simple. If we were using AvePoint, that's also probably super simple. If we were using like Azure Site Recovery, is that a two-way sync? Because I know Azure Site Recovery was designed to like get you up into Azure in a way. But if I was in Azure, could I use Azure Site Recovery to get myself out of Azure to a sovereign cloud or something like that?
Well, it's a really good question. I think that is hard, right? Because normally, like you said, it is a one-way replication. So you are going to replicate your service to Azure. When you do changes locally, your Azure side service will replicate the changes to your Azure environment. But it's not back and forth, I guess, because the server needs to be is not really. If you're using Azure side recovery, the Azure is not really replicated. Yeah, it's replicated to Azure, but it's not as a virtual machine already running in. So you're not using that as well. Yeah. So I think if you want to do that, you probably want to use some Azure Arc, maybe with some replication, high availability, maybe, but maybe something. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, same. It's an interesting one. I might have to look into that a bit deeper and see if there's a way to do two-way replication of that, because that could be a nice way to help people migrate away from Azure when they need to for X reasons, because I think it was recently, I think I see a TikTok or something, like Airbus, massive company, has just started moving themselves out of AWS to a sovereign cloud now. A French sovereign one. I think it was Scaleway or something like that. I can't remember the exact name. And I'm just thinking, I wonder how they did that. Did they use the native tooling from the actual cloud provider? Did they just lift and shift back out? It's an interesting topic for sure.
Else it will be just a data box, something like that, running to your data, sending it to Microsoft and say, hey, copy everything on the box, but you don't want that. I think replication could be, maybe you can think about it like in high availability, somewhere in the cloud, somewhere on premise, maybe do some replication instead.
Maybe they had VMware, and there's a VMware service, Azure VMware service, that actually lets you do the failover, live migration to the cloud and back and stuff like that. So maybe they're running that. I'm not sure, but it's just it's an interesting one for like DR purposes as well. Like to be able to move it that quickly between these different providers, because as we know, Azure has issues sometimes, and sometimes there's an issue where it's affecting like pretty much the whole of Azure, not just a region, or maybe it's even just affecting your main region. And having that offsite backup or local cloud could be a good thing to get your business critical parts running again. But and then same goes if you're on-prem and then it all breaks, you've got Azure backup. So like this cross-hybrid-y kind of cloud, maybe that is the future more so than just a sovereign cloud. Maybe it is a bit of this and a bit of that.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's a bit of both worlds. It also depends on the service you're running, right? So if you look at it from an AKS perspective or from a computer perspective, it's different, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because AKS, like you could potentially, we've got a lot of customers running AKS, stateful workloads. So there's nothing really to back up apart from their database that they already back up with Azure Backup or another tool. But then the actual AKS workloads is just, as you would say, YAML files. It's a bit more than YAML files, but it's Helm charts, or it is technically just YAML files at the end of the day. And you can lift and shift those. If you're using GitOps, you can just change the target where you want it to go to, connect that Git repository to a new cluster somewhere else, and it will, as long as those images are available, it will spin it up. So I think like the backup part maybe isn't as important inside most Kubernetes things. There will be times where you have your storage and you need to back that storage up because it could be like a Kafka queue or RabbitMQ or you're running a database locally and you need to back that up, and that's where Azure Backup can help, and it uses Velero behind the scenes, which is an open source tool. You've got Kasten by Veeam, so Veeam has their Kubernetes backup thing as well, and I think a load of others now do it too. And you can then back that data up and the manifest up so it can then be restored to the new cluster as a big package, and then let GitOps take it over. But none of these backups that I've seen actually deal with the container images, because if you're building container images and you've got a massive container image library now, and that library gets deleted, chopped, that region's gone down, and for some reason you're not using a premium Azure storage, Azure container registry, so it's not got your synchronized regional pairing going on, then you're gonna have to rebuild every container image you need to do. So you have to then also think about your source code and is that backed up and stuff like that. So like it's not just the VMs and stuff like that, and then after that it's like, where does my documentation, my playbooks live? They're probably on the file server or something else that needs backing up and restoring and stuff like that. So do you then have an offsite backup of your system? Like, if you're using Confluence, if Confluence went down because AWS went down, or I think it runs on AWS, or maybe Google, if that goes down, then you've lost all of your documentation. Do you back it up? Should we back it up? Should we trust that the Confluence people back it up for us? It's a tricky one.
It's always a tricky one because but that's also the reason why in the cloud landscape you can, for example, you can use global service, like for example, if you have some URLs running behind a front door, that's a global service. But if your DNS has issues, a global DNS issue, it's also not working, right? So is everything? Can you disaster recovery everything? Can you take everything Can you take the steering wheel in your own hands completely? That is the question.
That is very good, and that would all go down to your business decision of what your RTO, RPO is. Your recovery time objective, and what was the other one? Recovery point time objective.
Recovery time objective. I think
I can never remember the other one. But
no, that's also the reason why I always use the abbreviations, because that's the easy spot, right?
Everyone knows what they mean, but no one can say what they are.
No one will say that out loud. But that is so. If from a business point of view, so if you say, "Hi, I want to run production very fast. I don't mind about the data. The data can be restored. Let's say over in a week ago. Okay, cool. But then you, for your disaster recovery scenario, you can take that in backup. So if you have infrastructure as code, for example, you can say, okay, deploy it to another region. I will build a production server or a cluster or whatsoever fast, exactly as you used to, because we have it in code. Then that can be an answer, right, for your disaster recovery scenario.
Exactly.
And then,
the biggest issue though with infrastructure as code I see is it's not always kept up to date. So when you get to your DR situation, 3 a.m. wake up call, groggy eyes, half asleep still, and you're running the bicep deploy or Terraform apply or whatever, and it's like, failure, and it's because it's now using old modules that haven't been updated. You updated to the newest module. The whole syntax has changed now. Okay, what does this mean? What do I need to change?
Then you probably can you fix that by using your infrastructure as code in a registry, maybe?
Potentially, but sometimes Azure, for example, they disable the API. So if you're referencing a super old API,
you still need to fix
then it's never going to work. So you also need, part of your DR isn't just a one time a year recovery test. It's actually keeping your infrastructure as code up to date. And that's where, like, I've been recently playing with a tool called Renovate Bot, because we use Azure Verified Modules quite a lot, which is a Microsoft initiative for Bicep and also Terraform, but we use the Bicep version. And in GitHub, there's Dependabot, but it doesn't support Bicep, which is super annoying because it supports Terraform and I think a few other things. There's reasons behind it to do with like dependency log files and stuff like that. But RenovateBot does support AVM modules and Bicep. So I'm been looking at a way to actually implement that organizational wide, so we can run it from our like GitHub automation repository, and it can see all of our existing repos and new repos, and then it's create a pull request. So it runs like on a schedule once a week or something, creates a pull request to new repos that it hasn't seen before, saying, hey, we would like to onboard you into RenovateBot. You merge that repo in, and then the next scan, well, actually, technically, probably after you've merged that pull request in, it will create you a load of pull requests if your Bicep's out of date compared to the AVM modules, because you're linked to like the change log, so you can see if there's any breaking changes and stuff like that. So I've been playing with that, because then you just have to go and look at your pull requests and then do some tests, instead of going to go, right, I've got this 1,000+ line file, I need to go and find all my individual modules, test to see if they're up to date. You know, I've seen people online create agentic workflows for this and wasting tokens when they can just use this kind of tool out of the box, pretty much with just a small config file, and it does exactly the same, but more deterministic, because you don't always need AI. Like, would you use AI to test your disaster recovery?
I want to test it first myself. That's probably it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But that's also another discussion, when to use. I think it's, by the way, a really good discussion, when to use AI, when to use just a script, or when to use it, when to use it yourself, in which scenarios. But to go back to the infrastructure, testing it, updating it is also then. Because we have also always monitoring and managed services based on the infrastructure, but eventually, if you want to have a good disaster recovery scenario also based on the infrastructure as code, you also want to have that bit of addition to the service, right? To check your infrastructure as code, to check if everything is up to date, and maybe build some automation for that, or use automation for that. But I think it's the scope is getting bigger and bigger and bigger based on the whole package you want to have as a company, I think.
Yeah, because then you've also got to take into account drift detection. So you've got your nice infrastructure as code, looks amazing, it works in your test infrastructure deployments and everything. Then you've got, I'm going to use Simon because he's one of our colleagues and he's been on here before. He's gone to the Azure portal, made some changes because a P1 ticket came in and he needed to get it back up quick. But he's forgot that there's infrastructure as code, because it's like 3 a.m. in the morning. He's on escalation duty. He's just getting it back up and he's fixed it. And then for some reason, one of our other colleagues maybe has run the Bicep again because they've made a change that to fix another issue that they were working on. Now Simon's change is gone and we're back to the P1 because there's configuration drift between live and code. So we also need to take that into account. Now, Terraform, you have that with your Terraform log files and stuff like that. It's quite nice. But you don't really have that with Bicep. They sort of got deployment stacks now where you can put certain guardrails on, so you can't make changes, you can't delete, so you can't write or you can't delete unless you do it through the deployment stack. But I don't actually see that used much, and I think that's where we, as us Intercept and us as in the community, need to actually push more towards, because all of these examples on the blog posts and stuff like that, it's all just AZ deploy sub or AZ deploy group, but not AZ.
Maybe use the what if statement to see what happens. But I know what you mean. I know, But I'm curious, why do you think for a reason why this is not being used? And because if you think about it, deployment is always you will run it from the initial state, right? So this is the initial state where you build infrastructure as code for. This is a working state also if you're doing a normal OTAP in an OTAP way. So this is your single point of truth then when you if it's in the deployment stack, right? So do you know a reason why people are not using it?
I don't know if this is the real reason, but I think, and I'm going to blame ourselves as MVPs and community heroes here, we just don't talk about it enough. Basically, you know, we do either quick demos on our blog sites where it's just easy deploy, quickly done and stuff like that. There was a point where deployment stacks were not as feature rich as just normal bicep deployments, which I think also had a bit of a bad taste in some people's mouths. I've been testing it with some of our bicep that we use. Because I'm configuring things like, and I probably shouldn't be doing this in some of my bicep, but like Defender and stuff like that, setting the pricing tiers and stuff. Now, if I need to delete that deployment stack, it can't actually delete the Defender because, you know, it's not a resource that can be deleted. It's just setting a pricing tier. So then you have this deployment stack just sat there doing nothing, and it can't be deleted, it can't be removed, it can't. So you need to scope your bicep better and have like, this is my management group level 1, and it's setting actual Azure things that can't be deleted. I can't use a deployment stack for that, or I will use a deployment stack because I know I'm never going to delete it. I'm ever just going to change the tier from free to paid or whatever it is, standard or whatever. And then my other ones, then I'll do this. And then you sort of break down your landing zones a bit different. Because I think even the actual Azure landing zone from Microsoft doesn't use deployment stacks. And, you know, they could help push us and educate us all as well. But I need to play more with it and maybe do some blog posts about it.
I will too, because if we speak about it, then it is powerful. It can be powerful. It can also be, it's static, right? But you lose the discussion about who is doing some changes about code or on the portal or ClickOps, or you lose the discussion a little bit more if you use it a little bit more in deployment stacks, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think then it also helps with that DR because hopefully the drift isn't there as much or at all. And it should be nice. It should be nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm just thinking now in my head, can I try and do some more testing and some blog posts? And I think I should do some more blog posts on this. Definitely.
I think that's possible, right?
Yep. I'm just writing them in my head as we speak now.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
Cool. So keep an eye out, anyone. Hopefully I get those written soon. And it will probably still be AKS related because obviously it's AKS, but
I love to read that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. So we're at 28 minutes. Anything you think we should close with, like a nice message about DR backups, not getting woken up at 3 a.m. sort of thing?
I think don't take your environment for granted. Test your environment. Test your disaster recoveries. First of all, test your backups.
Yep.
And second of all, test your disaster recovery and see it as an insurance, because you will miss that disaster recovery when you never tested and you needed them in emergencies.
Definitely. Right, I love that. Yeah. So basically, test, and more test.
Yeah, test.
If you don't test, then you probably haven't got. Well, if you don't test, you definitely don't have a backup system. If you think you have backups, if you don't test them, there isn't a backup. And DR, if you don't test your backups, you've not got a DR either. So, test, then more test. And I guess with that, we're probably gonna close this one out. Hopefully, around about the 30-minute mark, which will be nice because usually we go on and on and on. And I think next month is it me and Wesley back?
I think so.
Yeah. So I want to say it's been a pleasure hosting the last two with you, Gert-Jan. Thank you very much for stepping in. It's always good to have a conversation. And if you missed Gert-Jan, you want to check out our podcast series that he does with Wesley. Look for what is the podcast called?
Talking Out Cloud.
Talking Out Cloud, and it's available on Spotify, I think Apple Music, and everywhere you would get your podcast stuff from. So yeah, give that a listen. I think are we in season 3 now?
We are in season 3. We are now running, but I don't think it's because we are running now. We have recorded the first episodes, I guess, so it will be online. I think soon. And we after the vacation period, we will record the other episodes as well.
Nice. So people's got 2 whole seasons to catch up on before season 3 kicks off. Brilliant. Awesome. Cool. So I guess with that, we'll just say thanks everyone for watching. Any questions, comments, please leave them. Feel free to reach out to us online, through email, wherever. We're always happy to chat.
Yes, definitely. Hey, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.